Inspiring philosophy's favorite cosmological argument is the Leibnizian Cosmological argument. This argument tries to prove a necessary being that created the universe by arguing that the universe is contingent. Here are the premises of the argument. Premise 3 cannot be logically or rationally disputed. Premise 1 is based on the principle of sufficient reason, and I agree with the PSR, so I can't or won't try to refute premise 1. The argument fails at premise 2, but in order to show this, I must refute the evidence or arguments that are supposed to show the universe had a beginning. The first piece of evidence Mr. Inspiring Philosophy uses to show the universe began to exist is the Big Bang Theory, which I've addressed what feels like tons of times by now. No, the Big Bang Theory does not show the universe began to exist because it is based on general relativity, which does not take the quantum regime into account. Mr. Inspiring Philosophy tells us that the cosmic microwave background radiation is evidence that confirms the universe sprang into existence from a Big Bang. That's wrong. The cosmic microwave background radiation is evidence of a Big Bang, not evidence of a beginning to the universe. Next, Mr. Inspiring Philosophy uses the BVG theorem to show the universe began. That also fails and is something I have already addressed over and over. The BVG theorem only shows at the very least that inflation has a beginning, and at most that the classical state of the universe had a beginning, not the universe as a whole. This was recently confirmed by Dr. Sean Michael Carroll during his debate with Dr. Bill Craig.
So I don't think it's the right thing to say that the Bordet-Guth-Vilenkin theorem says that the classical universe had a beginning. The part of the universe that we can describe using classical space-time had a beginning, just like this room has a beginning. But that says nothing at all about the universe as a whole.
So refuting the scientific evidence for the universe's beginning was very easy, since Mr. Inspiring Philosophy did not present anything new that I haven't already addressed repeatedly. But unlike the Kalam, it's not enough on the Leibnizian cosmological argument to simply refute the evidence that is supposed to prove the universe began. One must also show that the universe exists by the necessity of its own nature so as to avoid the conclusion that it is contingent, which would simply reaffirm the argument being true despite the evidence for the universe beginning to exist being a failure. First off, to do so, one must now shift from cosmology to philosophy and address what Inspiring Philosophy said earlier. Earlier, he said for the universe to be necessary, it must be eternal and changeless. I completely agree that for the universe to be necessary, it must be eternal. But the notion that for the universe to be necessary, it must be changeless is nonsense and has no basis in reason. I see no reason whatsoever to accept such a stipulation, let alone a valid one. At any rate, what reason is there to say that the universe exists by the necessity of its own nature? Well, there are several, but I will just share one. The universe exists by the necessity of its own nature because it entails both ontological categories of existence, which means the universe truly is the totality of existence. And of course, the totality of existence exists by the necessity of its own nature. The universe being everything that exists, or the totality of existence, is actually what it is commonly or often defined as. Though not defined like that by everyone, it still is a common definition, and so, on that definition, the universe does exist by the necessity of its own nature, since the totality of existence cannot fail to exist and is eternal. But actually, the universe really is everything that exists, since the universe entails both ontological categories. What is meant by this is there is only two ways something can exist: physical or non-physical, the latter often being called immaterial. The universe contains both. It has physical things like motor oil, Cape Upton, and hydraulic pumps, and it contains immaterial phenomena like love, math, thoughts, and the mind. So the universe really is the totality of existence, and thus exists by the necessity of its own nature. Therefore, the Leibnizian cosmological argument is completely refuted, not only because the points used to show the universe began has been refuted, but a case has been made, and a very strong one in my view, that the universe exists by the necessity of its own nature.